topical issues, and the first issue is in the name of Deputy Shane Cassells. You may introduce your topic now.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Corla, and thank you, Minister, for taking this topical issue today on the issue of the need for additional Garda resources for County Meath. Minister, just to cut to the chase, I very much appreciate that you are dealing with the macro issue of getting more guards into the system full stop and making sure that the security of our country is strengthened even further. And I suppose one of the key tenets of the confidence supply agreement was to ensure that we got an increase in Garda numbers to 15,000. So it was good to see in the budget that resources allocated for an additional 800 guards has been provided for. And I know that when it comes to the matter of the crime, Minister, no matter what deputy is in front of you here this evening, that you would share the sentiments expressed to you, regardless of what county that it was coming from. But there is a particular case to be made for Meath, and it is one that does need special attention, both from the management of the force itself and from the political body here in Dáil I as well. Because of all the commuter counties that surround Dublin, the population explosion in Meath has been quite pronounced. And so this topical this evening centres on how we are responding to extreme pressures in one area when additional resources become available, and how we spread them accordingly. And with that population explosion in Meath comes the pressure of housing, infrastructure, health and jobs. But crime is something that has really spiked in the county of Meath over the past year in both urban and rural settings, and it needs to be tackled before this increase is allowed to take root. Now, these issues were previously raised by me in the Dáil, and indeed directly with former Commissioner O'Sullivan at the Public Accounts Committee before the summer break, when I outlined to her how he had experienced some horrendous violent attacks on a business owner in Navan, and it was captured on a mobile phone and subsequently replayed on social media and captured by all the national newspapers as well. Of course, news cycles move on. But after the summer recess, I attended one of our regular policing meetings at the end of September with the Chief Superintendent in Meath, where stats for the county showed that crime had greatly increased over the last year. Property theft up a whopping 59%, thefts in shops up 44%, criminal damage up 31%, property crime up 39% with 1,359 incidents reported up to September, and assaults up as well. Now, I want to say that the Chief Superintendent, Fergus Healy, who only came into the job last year, has been exceptional and really excellent in analysing the threats from gangs coming in from Dublin down the motorway system and attacking areas such as Enfield, Navan, Ashbourne and Old Castle. But he needs help, and he has said that. Now, I know that just last week 10 additional guards came to Meath. They were pictured in this morning's Meath Chronicle with the Chief Super, 12 earlier in the year as well. But that 22 guards that came in only allows us to stand still. We have 313 guards in the county, and that figure places us below the national per capita average. Now, the Chief Super himself attended a public meeting on policing this night last week in Trim, and quite candidly and openly said that we need additional resources above and beyond this allocation to actually have a fair chance of tackling the threat. He said, and I quote, "We have to fight for our resources in Meath. You can't go to the table unless you have facts and figures. And certainly, here in Meath, those figures stand out and tell their own story." They're the words of the Chief Super, Fergus Healy, Minister, who as a professional is making the case for our county. And so, for him to say those words at a public meeting this night last week, it is naturally incumbent on me to fight his corner and the corner of the people in Meath in this Dáil here this week. And so, Minister, I'm asking you to ensure that Meath can get both the manpower it requires and indeed the tools that these guards need to do their job, and to support the words not just of what I'm saying here this evening, but of the Chief Super, who is crying out for that help as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much on time, Minister.
Thank you, Cahirlock, and I wish to thank Deputy Cassells for raising this important matter. Can I say the Government is committed to ensuring a strong and visible police presence throughout the country in order to maintain and strengthen community engagement, provide reassurance to citizens and, of course, deter crime. To make this a reality for all, the Government has in place a plan to achieve an overall Garda workforce of 21,000 personnel by 2021, comprising 15,000 Garda members, 2,000 Garda Reserve members and 4,000 civilians. As the Deputy will appreciate, the Garda Commissioner is responsible for the distribution of resources, including personnel, among the various Garda divisions. I, as Minister, do not have a direct role in the matter. I am informed, however, by the Garda Commissioner that with regard to the deployment of Garda personnel, a distribution model is used which takes into account all relevant and appropriate factors, including population, crime trends and the policing needs of each individual Garda division, including the Meath division, with a view towards providing an effective and responsive police service. I want to acknowledge what Deputy Cassells has said, with particular reference to the growing population in Meath, and he makes a good point in that regard. I am informed by the Commissioner that the Garda strength in the Meath division, as of the 31st of August 2017, which is the latest date for which figures are readily available, was 295. There are also 17 Garda reserves and 28 civilians attached to the division. When appropriate, the work of local Gardaí is supported by a number of Garda national units, such as the National Bureau of Criminal Investigation, the Garda National Economic Crime Bureau and the Garda National Drugs and Organised Crime Bureau. I am further informed by the Commissioner that since the reopening of the Garda College in Templemore in September 2014, close to 1,400 recruits have attested as members of Garda Síochána and have been assigned to mainstream duties nationwide. Can I confirm that 46 of whom have been assigned to the division in Meath? In addition, another 200 trainee Garda are scheduled to attest later this year, which will see Garda numbers, taking account of projected retirements, increase to around 13,500 by the end of the year, an increase of 500 since the end of 2016. I am pleased to say that Budget 18 will support the continuation of this high level of investment in Garda Síochána and ensure that the vision of an overall workforce of 21,000 by 2021 remains firmly on track. In 2018, a further 800 new Garda recruits will enter the Garda College. An additional 500 civilians will also be recruited to fill critical skills gaps across the organisation and to facilitate the redeployment of Gardaí from administrative and technical duties to frontline operational duties. We need to ensure that Gardaí are doing on a daily basis work that they are trained to do. That means Garda work. There are plans to strengthen the Garda Reserve, with new reserve expected to commence training early next year. The focus on investment in personnel is critical. The moratorium on recruitment, introduced in 2010, resulted in a significant reduction in the overall strength of Garda Síochána. We are now rebuilding the organisation. We are now providing the Commissioner with the resources needed to deploy increasing numbers of Garda across every Garda division, including the Meath division, over the coming time.
Thank you very much, Minister. Deputy, you have 2 minutes for supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, I do appreciate that the Commissioner is the person charged with the deployment of resources, and I acknowledge that at the outset, but I know that you appreciate that decisions that we take in here on a planning matter create the communities that we live in, and in particular the very big communities that were created in the Greater Dublin area, and that was the case that I was making here today. And I was echoing what the Chief Super said at a public forum last week, and seeking to have his words actually implemented. Now, I have raised this issue directly with Acting Commissioner O'Coolan when he was before us a few weeks ago in the PAC. I showed him the front page of that morning's Meath Chronicle, which screamed with a headline, "Shock Rise in Crime Stats in Meath." I've written to him separately, so he knows the score, and this evening I would like if you, for Minister for Justice, would back our Chief Super and the people of Meath in this cause. I suppose one very big concern, Minister, is that any new guards coming into Meath are immediately going to be gobbled up by the big population centres in Navan and Ashbourne, and I can understand that. I'm from Navan. I know the pressure this area is under, and I want to see boots on the ground to reassure the citizens of my town. But I'm also acutely aware of the serious threats, because there are rural areas in my constituency, like Old Castle, at Boy, that do not have a full-time police presence. And even a growing town like Enfield, that has a population of 4,000, only has 3 guards, and up the road Longwood with only 1. So again, this highlights the need for additional resources above and beyond the allocations that are happening at present, because if the level of deployments are deemed acceptable that's happening, well then the opportunity to actually establish a proper police force in growing areas of Enfield or rural areas like Old Castle or Boy are never going to happen. And finally, Minister, the issue of resources that I'm raising this evening is not just one of personnel, it is one of physical resources also. And in that respect, Minister, can I ask, there's a real need for a new divisional headquarters in Meath, and that has been raised by Garda management in Meath also. Consultation has taken place with the local authority in terms of an identified site. There is one now, but we need the OPW in the room to actually be a proactive body because of their responsibility in terms of the site. And can I ask you, would you use your good office to try and get the OPW to progress this as a matter of urgency? the local authority are working with Garda management in Meath. Could I ask you to use your good office to get the OPW in the room to make sure that site has progressed and we could see that new divisional headquarters built in Meath as well, because the guards do need that physical resource to be able to do their jobs as well. Thanks.
Yeah, can I say in response to the latter point, I would be very happy to speak to my government colleague, Minister Kevin Boxer-Moran, on that issue, and I'll revert to the Deputy in early course. I mentioned earlier here the government's plan for an overall Garda workforce of 21,000 by the year 2021, and that, of course, is complemented by substantial investment in resources across the board on Garda Síochána. I've secured a total budget of £1.65 billion for Garda Síochána for 2018, an increase on that of 2017. It should be noted that the Garda allocation continues to substantially benefit from the significant additional funding that was provided in 2016 and maintained in 2017 to fund the sustained response to tackle gangland crime, to fund the continuation of Operation Thor, and to ensure that measures to prevent international terrorism can be continued actively. Some €330 million, including over €200 million under the capital plan, is being invested in Garda ICT infrastructure over the period 16 to 21. This major investment will allow Garda Síochána to deploy the latest cutting-edge technologies in the fight against crime, will facilitate progress on important reforms arising from the reports of the Garda Inspectorate on the matter of crime investigation. The Capital Plan 1621 provides for an investment of €46 million in the Garda fleet to ensure that Garda Síochána has a modern, effective and fit for purpose fleet. This is in addition to the investment of almost €30 million in the period 13 to 15. So I want to say that I acknowledge the importance of the issue as raised by Deputy Cassells. The investment that I speak about will facilitate the provision of more effective policing services, and of course it is to be expected that the Meath division, like all other Garda divisions, will benefit from these new resources becoming available.